I collapsed alone on my apartment floor on my 70th birthday, struggling to breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I needed help, fast. My finger slipped. I sent the text to the wrong person. The person who hadn't spoken to me in 12 years showed up at the hospital instead. I tried to apologize, told him he could leave, that I understood why he didn't want to see me. He looked at me like I'd said something crazy. "What are you talking about?" That's when I realized something was very, very wrong. And when he found the shoebox under my bed, when he saw what was inside, his face went white. 12 years. 12 years of lies, and I'd believed every single one. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because when he started looking at my finances, when he found what my son had been doing all this time, I had to make an impossible choice. And that choice changed our lives forever. My name is Barbara. I am 70 years old, and this is my story. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. I woke up on my 70th birthday to the sound of water dripping somewhere in the walls. The radiator clanked twice, then went silent. Cold air seeped through the window frame where the seal had cracked months ago. I pulled the thin blanket tighter and stared at the water stain spreading across the ceiling like a map of nowhere I wanted to go. 70 years old. The number sat heavy in my chest. I got up slowly, my knees complaining about the cold floor. The studio apartment at 847 Russell Street measured maybe 300 square feet if you counted the bathroom. Brown carpet, worn down to the backing near the door. A kitchenette with a hot plate and a mini fridge that hummed too loud. One window that looked out at the brick wall of the building next door. This was my life now. I made instant coffee because the real kind cost too much. 3 pills sat on the bathroom counter, carefully cut in half. The bottle said take 1 daily, but I made them last twice as long. The pharmacy wanted $40 for refills. Raymond gave me $400 a month for everything. Rent, food, medicine, everything. You learn to stretch things. I got dressed in one of my 3 dresses. This one was green, faded around the collar. I'd had it for 8 years, maybe 9. The buttons were loose but they still worked. The mailbox downstairs was empty like always. All my important mail went to Raymond's address now. Bank statements, social security notices, anything official. He'd set it up after my husband died, said it would be easier if he handled the paperwork. I was so lost back then, drowning in grief. It seemed like a kindness. Back upstairs, I sat at the small table and opened the photo album I kept on the shelf. My husband's face smiled up at me from a picture taken in the backyard on Stewart Street. Our old house, the real house, the one with the workshop in the garage and the maple tree Peter used to climb. My husband standing there with his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, holding a wrench, completely happy. I turned the page. Peter at age 7, gap-toothed and grinning. Peter at 10 with his soccer uniform on, holding a trophy. Peter at 14, already taller than me, standing between his parents at some school event. Sharon's face looked back at me from that photo. My daughter-in-law, gone 18 years now. Peter's mother. She'd been driving him home from soccer practice when it happened. Another driver ran a red light. She died protecting him. I closed the album before the memories could pull me under. Under my bed, pushed far back where I didn't have to see it every day, was a shoebox. I pulled it out and set it on the table. Lifted the lid. Letters, birthday cards, Christmas cards, all of them addressed to Peter in my handwriting, none of them ever sent. 12 years of words he'd never read. I picked one up, dated from 5 years ago. My own handwriting stared back at me. Dear Peter, I hope you're well. I think about you every single day. Raymond told me not to contact him. Said Peter had made it clear he didn't want to hear from me, that his therapist said it was healthier for him to have distance, that I reminded him of painful things, that seeing my name on his phone caused him stress. So I wrote letters I never mailed, kept them in a box like secrets. My phone sat on the table. I picked it up and scrolled through my contacts. Not many names left. The neighbor Patricia Rodriguez from apartment 2A. The pharmacy. My doctor's office, though I hadn't been in over a year. The copay was $30, and I needed that for food. And there, near the bottom, Peter, Don't call. I'd saved his number all these years. The same cell phone number he'd had since he was 18, before everything fell apart. I never deleted it. Never called it either, because Raymond said Peter didn't want that. But I never deleted it. The afternoon crawled by. I reread some of the old letters, then put them back in the box, slid it under the bed where it belonged. Tried to watch TV, but the antenna only picked up 2 channels and both of them were showing things I didn't care about. Around 7, my phone rang. Raymond's name lit up the screen. "Hi, Mom. Happy birthday." "Thank you, sweetheart. Sorry I can't make it by today. Got a lot going on. Work stuff, you know how it is." Behind his voice I could hear noise. Bells ringing, people talking loud, someone laughing. A casino, maybe. Or a bar. "That's okay, I understand. I'll try to swing by next week. We'll do something then, all right?" "Sure, that sounds nice." "Okay, gotta go. Happy birthday." He hung up. I set the phone down and looked at it for a long time. He wasn't coming next week. He never did when he said that, but he'd called, which meant he could tell people he called. That was something, I guess. For dinner I opened a can of soup and poured half into a bowl. Put the rest in the fridge for tomorrow. Heated it on the hot plate while the radiator clanked, and the ceiling dripped somewhere inside the walls. I'd bought myself a cupcake from the dollar store, yellow cake with pink frosting, plastic wrapped. I set it on the table with one candle I'd saved from last year, lit it with a match. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered to the empty room. The candle flame bent sideways in the draft from the window. I blew it out and ate the cupcake slowly, making it last. By 11 o'clock I was getting ready for bed when the shaking started in my hands, then the sweating. My heart began pounding wrong, too fast and too hard. The room tilted sideways and I grabbed the edge of the table. My chest squeezed tight. Couldn't get a full breath. Vision blurred around the edges. Something was very wrong. I fumbled for my phone, nearly dropped it, hit Raymond's name, straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. "Come on," I whispered. "Please." The tightness in my chest got worse. I couldn't breathe right. Hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I tried to dial 911, but my fingers slipped. When the operator answered, I tried to speak, but only a wheeze came out. She kept asking questions I couldn't answer. I hung up, panicking. Patricia. My neighbor. She'd help me. I opened my contacts with shaking hands, vision doubling, scrolled looking for her name. Patricia Rodriguez, had to find it. My thumb moved across the screen. Everything blurred together. I tapped something that looked right. Typed with trembling fingers, "Please help. Can't breathe. Apartment 3B, 847 Russell Street." Hit send. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered on the floor. I tried to reach for it, but my legs gave out. The brown carpet came up fast, and then everything went dark. The beeping woke me first. Then the lights, bright and white overhead. I tried to lift my hand, but something tugged at my arm. An IV line, taped to my skin. Monitors blinked green numbers I couldn't understand. Hospital. I was in a hospital. My mouth felt dry as paper. My head ached. When I tried to sit up, the room tilted sideways and I let myself fall back against the pillow. A nurse appeared beside the bed, checking one of the monitors. Young woman with tired eyes and pink scrubs. "You're awake. Good. How are you feeling?" "I don't know." My voice came out scratchy. "What happened?" "Your blood sugar dropped dangerously low. You're lucky someone called 911 when they did." She adjusted something on the IV. "You're stable now, but the doctor wants to keep you for observation." I closed my eyes, trying to remember. The apartment. My birthday. The chest pain. Trying to text Patricia. "There's a man in the waiting room," the nurse said. "He's been here for hours asking about you. Your son?" Relief washed through me. Raymond came. He actually came. "Can I see him?" "Let me check with the doctor first. He'll be in shortly." She left and I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them, losing count, starting over. The door opened again. I turned my head, expecting Raymond. Peter stood in the doorway. My heart stopped, started again, pounding hard enough to make the monitor beep faster. He looked taller than I remembered, broader in the shoulders, wore an expensive-looking coat and dark jeans. His hair was shorter, face older, but it was him, my grandson, standing right there. "What are you doing here?" The words came out wrong, too sharp. I tried to sit up, and the IV line pulled. Pain shot through my arm. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I'm so sorry. I was trying to text my neighbor Patricia. I didn't mean to bother you. You don't have to be here." He stayed in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest. His face gave nothing away. "I got your text. I called 911. His voice was flat, careful. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Really, you can go. I know you don't want to be here." He didn't move, just watched me with those dark eyes that looked so much like Sharon's. It hurt. "Please," I said. "I understand. You have your own life. This was an accident." Still nothing. He uncrossed his arms and stepped closer to the bed, looked at the monitors, the IV bag, then at me, really looked, the way you look at something you're trying to figure out. I pulled the thin hospital blanket higher, suddenly aware of how I must look. 70 years old, too thin, wearing a faded hospital gown, my hair probably a mess. The shame burned hot in my chest. "I'll call Patricia," I said. "My neighbor. She can help me get home. You don't need to stay." A knock at the door, and the doctor walked in. Older man with gray hair and glasses, holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Miller, good to see you awake." He glanced at Peter. "Family?" "My grandson," I said quietly. The doctor nodded and moved to the side of the bed. "Your blood sugar was at 42 when the paramedics brought you in. That's severely hypoglycemic. Another hour and we'd be having a very different conversation." I nodded, not sure what to say. "Tell me about your medication regimen. What are you taking?" 3 pills, for my blood sugar. Once daily?" I hesitated. "The bottle says that. But they're expensive. $40 for a refill. So I cut them in half. Make them last." The doctor's expression changed. Not angry, but sad in a way that made me feel worse than anger would have. "Mrs. Miller, that's extremely dangerous. Diabetes medication is dosed carefully. You can't just cut it in half." "I know. There isn't always enough money." "When was your last checkup?" "Maybe a year ago. A little more." "The copay?" $30. He wrote something on the clipboard. "You also show signs of malnutrition and chronic dehydration. Are you eating regularly?" "Yes, every day." "Enough food?" I didn't answer. The truth sat heavy between us. The doctor sighed and set the clipboard down. "I'm going to have the social worker stop by. You need to qualify for some assistance programs. This can't continue." He left and I couldn't look at Peter, just stared at my hands on the blanket, the IV line snaking up my arm. The door opened again, a woman this time, younger, carrying a tablet. "Social worker," her badge said. "Mrs. Miller, I'm Karen from Patient Services. I need to ask you a few questions about your living situation and emergency contacts." She pulled up a chair, started asking questions. Who lived with me? Nobody. Did I have family nearby? My son, emergency contact, Raymond Miller. "He's very busy," I said. "Works a lot. I don't want to bother him." Peter's jaw tightened. I saw it from the corner of my eye. The social worker asked more questions about income, housing, insurance. I answered as best I could. Minimal Medicare coverage, no supplemental insurance, rent paid by my son. Finally she left, and it was just me and Peter again. The silence stretched out like a road going nowhere. "Where is my father?" Peter's voice cut through the quiet. "Why isn't he here?" "He's working. He called earlier today. He has a lot going on." Even I could hear how weak that sounded. "He called? On your birthday?" "Yes. He wished me happy birthday." Peter said nothing for a long moment. Then, "Where are you living now? What happened to the house on Stewart Street?" The question surprised me. "You remember that house? I used to visit there, when I was a kid." Oh, the memory hurt. Peter running through those rooms, climbing the maple tree in the backyard. "After your grandfather died, the house needed so many repairs. Raymond said we had to sell it. He's been managing everything for me since then." Managing everything? My finances, my social security, all the paperwork. I twisted the edge of the blanket between my fingers. It gets so confusing. He makes sure everything is paid. It's easier this way. Peter didn't respond. He looked at me, and I looked away. Couldn't stand whatever was in his eyes. He saw it all, I realized. The cheap hospital gown worn thin from too many washings, my arms too thin, bones showing through skin, the way I apologized for breathing. Everything Raymond must have told him about me, and nothing matching what he saw. You don't have to stay, I said again. Really, you have your own life. You already said that. I know, I just don't want you to feel obligated. He pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down, stretched his legs out in front of him. I'll stay. But I'll stay, he said again, quieter this time. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. The afternoon bled into evening. Nurses came and went. They brought me food and I ate a few bites before my stomach turned. Peter sat in that chair the whole time, sometimes looking at his phone, mostly just sitting. I tried to stay awake, tried to think of something to say that would make this less awful, but exhaustion pulled at me like weights tied to my bones. You can go, I whispered. I know you have your own life. I understand you don't want contact. Peter looked up from his phone. Who told you that? Raymond, your father. He said you needed distance. Something changed in Peter's face, just for a second, then it was gone. Get some rest, was all he said. I wanted to argue, but my eyes wouldn't stay open. The beeping of the monitors got softer farther away. Sleep reached up and pulled me under. When I woke sometime in the dark hours of night, Peter was still there, sitting in that chair with his coat folded on his lap, head tipped back against the wall. Not sleeping, just thinking. The fluorescent light from the hallway cut a line across his face. He looked like Sharon. Same serious expression she used to get when something bothered her. Same way of holding himself very still when his mind was working. I closed my eyes before he could see I was awake. Listened to the monitors beeping, the hospital sounds in the distance. Tried to understand why he was still here. Nothing made sense. Raymond said Peter didn't want contact, that I caused him stress, that his therapist recommended distance. So why was he sitting in this hospital room at 2 a.m? I didn't have an answer, and I was too tired, too confused, and too scared to look for one. Morning came with the sound of breakfast trays rolling down the hallway. I woke to find Peter still in the chair, coat folded on his lap, eyes closed. Not sleeping, I didn't think, just resting. The nurse came in to check my vitals and remove the IV, said the doctor wanted to see me before discharge. Peter opened his eyes when she left. You stayed all night, I said. Yeah, you didn't have to. He didn't answer that. Just stood and stretched, rolled his shoulders. The doctor came by around 8, checked my chart, asked how I felt. Better, I told him. He didn't look convinced but signed the discharge papers anyway. Said I needed to follow up with my regular doctor within a week. I nodded, knowing I wouldn't. $30 copay. The social worker appeared in the doorway as the doctor left. Karen, the same woman from yesterday. She looked at me, then at Peter. Mr. Miller, could I speak with you outside for a moment? Peter followed her into the hallway. I could see them through the small window in the door. Her talking, gesturing. Peter's face serious, listening. She looked worried about something. They came back in together. Mrs. Miller, Karen said, I've discussed your situation with your grandson. Given your recent medical emergency and living conditions, I'm concerned about you returning home alone. Do you have family you could stay with? I looked at Peter. He was watching me. My son Raymond, I said. He can help. Have you been able to reach him? Not yet. But I will. Karen didn't look satisfied, but she nodded. Please make sure you have support at home. And follow up with your doctor. Ready? Peter asked when I came out. You don't need to drive me. I can take the bus. I'm driving you. We walked to the elevator. His car was in the parking garage, a dark sedan that looked expensive. Clean interior, leather seats. I sat carefully, afraid to touch anything. You really don't have to do this, I said as he pulled out of the garage. I can manage on my own. He didn't answer, just drove. Russell Sate looked worse in daylight. The apartment building squatted between a vacant lot and a laundromat. Paint peeling off the walls, trash blown against the fence. The security door hung open, propped with a brick someone had wedged underneath. Peter parked at the curb, came around to help me out of the car. "There's no elevator," I said. "It's 2 flights up." "That's fine." We climbed the stairs slowly. My legs felt weak, shaky from the hospital stay. Peter stayed close behind me, one hand near my elbow in case I stumbled. At the top of the 2nd floor, I unlocked the door to apartment 3B, stepped inside, heard Peter stop behind me in the doorway. I saw it through his eyes then, really saw it. The water stain on the ceiling had spread since yesterday, brown and blooming like rot. The carpet worn through to concrete in spots. One window looking out at brick, the radiator silent and cold because I kept the heat down to save money. Peter walked in slowly, looked around without saying anything. The kitchenette barely qualified as a kitchen. Hot plate on the counter, mini fridge humming in the corner, toaster oven I'd bought at a yard sale 3 years ago. He opened the fridge. I watched his face as he took in the contents. Half-gallon of milk, jar of mayonnaise, some crackers in a plastic bag, wilted lettuce I'd been stretching for a week. He opened the cabinet above the sink, canned soup stacked 3 deep, instant coffee, tea bags, that was it. Moved to the bathroom. I heard him in there, not saying anything. Saw him looking at the pills lined up on the counter, each one carefully cut in half. My 3 dresses hung in the closet. 1 winter coat with the lining torn. 1 pair of shoes. Peter stood in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets, jaw working like he was trying not to say something. "How long have you lived here?" His voice came out quiet. "Raymond moved me here about 12 years ago, right after the house sold and your grandfather passed." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "It's fine, really, it's affordable." "Where did the money from the house go?" The question surprised me. Stewart Street. That was a nice house. Had to be worth something. Raymond said it needed expensive repairs. He used the money for this place and my expenses. Peter looked around the apartment again. "This place costs what? $600 a month?" $650. "And the house on Stewart Street sold for how much?" "I don't know exactly. Raymond handled all that." He was quiet for a moment. "How does he manage your finances?" "Raymond set up my Social Security to go directly into his account. He pays my rent and bills from there, and gives me cash each month for groceries. It's simpler that way. I don't have to worry about paperwork." "How much cash?" "About $400. I twisted my hands in my lap. "Sometimes a little less if there are extra expenses." Peter's hands clenched into fists in his pockets. But when he spoke, his voice stayed level. "Social Security for someone your age would be more than $400 a month. Raymond takes care of everything. The rent, utilities, everything." He walked to the small table where I'd left some mail, picked up the stack, started looking through it. Most of it was addressed to me but sent to Raymond Miller's address. "Why is your mail going to his address?" "After your grandfather died, I was so overwhelmed. All the bank statements, Social Security notices, official things. Raymond suggested forwarding everything important to his address so he could help me sort through it. He handles it all." Peter set the mail down, picked up some other papers, utility bills, receipts, a bank statement from 2 months ago. I watched him reading, doing math in his head. His face got darker. The silence stretched too long. I couldn't stand it anymore. "I need to use the bathroom," I said. I went in and closed the door, stared at myself in the mirror. 70 years old and looking older. When had I gotten so thin? When had my hair gone this gray? I gathered my toothbrush and the pills from the counter, hands shaking. Took my time because I didn't want to go back out there and see whatever Peter had found. When I finally came back, he was sitting at the table with a shoebox in front of him. My shoebox, the one from under the bed. My stomach dropped. He held a letter in his hands, one of mine, addressed to him in my handwriting. He looked up at me and I saw something in his face I couldn't read. "What are these?" I set the toiletries down, couldn't look at him. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have kept those," Raymond said. "You didn't want to hear from me, that it would upset you if I contacted you, so I wrote them, but never sent them. I couldn't throw them away." He picked up another letter, opened it, read, "Dear Peter, today would have been your mother's birthday. She would be so proud of the man you've become." His voice caught on the last word. I sat down on the bed, hands shaking. He opened more. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, letters about the weather, about things I saw that reminded me of him, about memories of Sharon, 12 years of words piling up on that table. What exactly did my father tell you about me? The question came out tight, controlled, like he was holding something back. I folded my hands in my lap. He said you were angry after your mother died, that you blamed the family for what happened, that your therapist recommended distance from me because I reminded you of painful memories. He said you told him to stop giving you my messages because seeing my name caused you stress. I took a breath. He said you'd moved on with your life and didn't want an old woman dragging you down. The silence stretched out. And you believed him? You're his son. Why would he lie about something like that? Peter set the letters down carefully, like they might break. My father told me you blamed me for my mother's death. The room tilted. What? He said that at her funeral, you told him if I hadn't needed to be picked up from soccer practice that day, she'd still be alive, that you couldn't stand to look at me because I reminded you of what you lost, that you said terrible things about me. I stood up so fast the room spun. No, Peter, no, he said. You were bitter and toxic, that I should cut contact for my own mental health. That's not true. None of that is true. Tears blurred my vision. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. Taking you to practice, being your mother, that was her greatest joy. The accident was just that. An accident. Another driver ran a red light. It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. My voice broke completely. I held you at the funeral. Do you remember? You were 14 years old and sobbing, and I held you. I told you it wasn't your fault. I would never say those things. How could he tell you that? We stared at each other across the tiny apartment, both of us shaking. He lied to both of us, Peter said, his voice barely a whisper. I sat down hard on the bed, put my hands over my face. For 12 years? For 12 years. I couldn't stop crying. 12 years of believing Peter didn't want me. 12 years of him believing I blamed him for Sharon's death. All of it lies. I need to know everything, Peter said after a long time. About the house. About your finances. All of it. He's your father. Maybe there's an explanation. Grandma. He cut me off, but gently. He kept us apart for 12 years with lies. He told you I didn't want you. He told me you blamed me for my mother's death. Look at this apartment. Look at your health. Look at those letters you wrote but never sent because you thought I hated you. His voice cracked. There's no innocent explanation for any of this. I wiped my eyes, looked at him sitting there with my letters spread across the table. He was right. I knew he was right. What do we do? I'm a financial forensic consultant. It's what I do for a living. Find fraud, trace money, uncover financial crimes. If something wrong is happening here, I'll find it. What if it's bad? He looked at me directly. Then we deal with it, together. But first we find the truth. I nodded slowly, scared of what we might find. More scared of not knowing. Okay, I whispered. Okay. Peter took me to a hotel that afternoon. A nice one. The kind with a doorman and marble floors in the lobby. My room had soft carpets, a king-sized bed with more pillows than I knew what to do with, and a bathroom bigger than my kitchen. He ordered room service, and I stared at the tray when it arrived. A sandwich, soup, salad, fruit, all of it for me. Eat, he said. I did. More food than I'd had in days. Over the next week and a half, Peter worked. That's what he called it. Work. He'd show up every morning with his laptop and folders, spread papers across the desk and coffee table, make phone calls I didn't understand. He'd hired people, a forensic accountant, an attorney who specialized in elder financial abuse. Words I'd never thought would apply to me. What if we're wrong about this? I asked on the third day. What if there's a reasonable explanation? Peter looked up from his laptop. Then the investigation will show that. But if we're right, if he's been stealing from you, don't you want to know? I twisted the edge of the bedspread between my fingers. What if finding out breaks what's left of our family? He already broke it. 12 years ago. We're just finding out how. The documents started arriving. Big envelopes Peter signed for at the door. Bank statements, property records, insurance files, social security records, things I'd never seen, hadn't known existed. He spread them across every surface in the hotel room. I sat in the chair by the window and watched him work. The first thing he showed me was the power of attorney. "You signed this 12 years ago," he said, holding up the paper. "Do you remember?" I looked at the signature, mine, but shaky. "After your grandfather died, I was so lost," Raymond said. "It was just in case he needed to help with paperwork. It gives him complete control over your finances." The words sat heavy in the air. Peter pulled out more papers. Property records for the house on Stewart Street. The house sold for $320,000. I blinked. What? $320,000. 12 years ago. He showed me the documents. "Your signature is on the sale papers." I looked at it, my name, but something about it looked wrong. Too perfect, like someone had traced it. Raymond told me the house needed $200,000 in repairs, that we barely broke even. Peter shook his head. "The inspection report shows normal wear, nothing major, and the sale money went into an account in his name only. You never saw a penny of it." My hands started shaking. He pulled out more papers. Social Security statements. "Your benefit is $1,850 a month. Raymond gives me $400. I know. He's been pocketing $1,450 every month for 12 years. That's over $209,000. The number didn't make sense. Too big. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. "There's more," Peter said quietly. He showed me papers about a life insurance policy. My husband's name at the top. $150,000. My name listed as beneficiary. "I didn't know about this," I whispered. "The paperwork was sent to Raymond's address. He submitted the claim with your signature, forged like the house papers. He kept all of it." I put my hand over my mouth. Peter kept going. Credit card statements. 3 cards I'd never seen, all in my name. Casino withdrawals, expensive restaurants, electronics, clothing, things I'd never touched. $43,000 in debt, on cards you didn't know existed. How did he? Power of attorney. He opened them using that document. Peter spread out more papers, receipts, purchase records. 8 years ago, month after he maxed the first card, he bought a new truck. $35,000. I've traced casino withdrawals going back years, regular expensive dinners, trips. He looked at me. "All of it funded by stealing from you." I couldn't speak, couldn't think. My own son. Total theft is over $500,000 across 12 years. 500,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. "My own son," I said finally. "I trusted him with everything." Peter sat down on the edge of the bed. "He took advantage of your grief. When Grandpa died, you were vulnerable. He manipulated that." "But why?" My voice broke. "If he needed money, I would have helped him. Why lie? Why steal?" "Because this wasn't about need. This was about greed and control. And because if you knew the truth, you'd stop him." I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, tried to make sense of any of it. Why did he keep us apart? The question I'd been carrying for days. Why lie to both of us? Peter was quiet for a long time. "Because together, we would have figured it out. You would have told me about your finances. I would have seen how you were living. We would have compared stories and realized something was wrong. He needed us isolated from each other." The truth of it hit like cold water. He used my grief over losing you to control me. He used my fear of losing him too. And he used my guilt over my mother's death to keep me away. We sat in silence. The hotel room too quiet, too clean, too far from the life I'd known. "I need to tell you something," Peter said, "about why I left when I was 20. I looked at him. After my mom died, Dad changed, got angry, controlling. By the time I was 16, he was verbally abusive, called me worthless, told me I'd never amount to anything. When I got into college, he said I was wasting my time. When I started doing well, he'd tear me down." His voice shook. "By the time I was 20, I couldn't take it anymore. He was destroying me. I left and cut all contact to survive. But I believed his lies about you. I thought you blamed me for Mom's death. So I never reached out. I was alone because I thought I deserved to be." I reached across the space between us and took his hands. "You didn't deserve any of that. Your mother would be heartbroken to know what he did to you." We sat there, both of us crying. "Tell me about her," Peter said after a while, his voice rough. "About my mother. I need to know." I squeezed his hands, took a breath. Sharon was kind, funny in a quiet way that snuck up on you, patient with you when you were small and impatient with everything else. She loved being a mother more than anything, used to say you were the best thing she'd ever done. Peter's eyes filled with tears. She was driving you home from soccer practice on a spring evening. Another driver ran a red light at the intersection. She died protecting you. On impact. His face crumpled. At the funeral, I held you. You were 14, and sobbing, and I held you. I told you it wasn't your fault, that your mother's last thought was keeping you safe, that she loved you so much. I don't remember, he whispered. I don't remember any of that. Grief does that sometimes, takes the memories we need most. He broke down completely then. I moved to sit beside him on the bed, and held him the way I had at the funeral. Let him cry like he was 14 again, like he should have been able to cry all those years. We sat like that for a long time, grieving Sharon, grieving what Raymond had stolen from both of us, crying for all we'd lost. Finally, exhausted, we pulled apart. I'm going to make this right, Peter said, his voice rough from crying. Get back what he stole. Make sure he can never hurt you again. What happens now? I confront him. With evidence. Give him a choice. Return everything or face criminal charges. Will he go to prison? That depends on what he chooses, but either way he won't control your life anymore. The sun was setting outside the hotel window, casting long shadows across the papers scattered everywhere. Evidence of 12 years of theft laid out in black and white. I missed so much of your life, I said quietly. Your 20s, watching you build your career, everything. I missed having you too. After Mom died, I had no one. I thought I was alone. You're not alone anymore. He looked at me. Neither are you. And I realized something then. Something I hadn't understood until that moment. We'd both been lost. Him without a mother, me without my grandson. Both of us believing we deserved the loneliness. Both of us carrying guilt that wasn't ours to carry. Raymond had used our grief against us. Our love for each other. Twisted into a weapon. But we'd found each other again. And now we knew the truth. Peter stood and started gathering the papers into organized piles. I'll need you to sign some documents. Give me permission to act on your behalf legally. Okay. And I need you to trust me. This is going to get difficult. I looked at him. My grandson. Sharon's son. The boy I'd held at his mother's funeral, who'd grown into a man who knew how to fight back. I trust you, I said. And I meant it. Peter met with Raymond a week later. I stayed at the hotel because I couldn't face it. Couldn't sit across from my son, knowing what he'd done. Peter left early that morning with a folder thick with evidence. Told me he'd arranged to meet Raymond at a coffee shop downtown. Public place, neutral territory. I sat by the hotel window and waited. Tried to read but the words blurred together. Tried to watch television but couldn't focus. Just sat there counting minutes. Peter came back 3 hours later. His face was hard, closed off. How did it go? I asked. He tried everything. Denial, gaslighting, playing the victim. Peter set the folder on the desk. I gave him 48 hours to start returning the money. After that, we file criminal charges. What did he say? Does it matter? I looked down at my hands. He's still my son. I know. Peter's voice softened. I'm sorry. That evening, my phone rang. Raymond's number. Peter had it in his hand before I could reach it. I blocked him, he said. He can't call you anymore. An hour later, someone knocked on my door at the old apartment on Russell Street. The neighbor, Patricia Rodriguez, called Peter to tell him. Raymond had shown up looking for me. She'd told him to leave or she'd call the police. Then the text messages started coming to Peter's phone. He showed me a few. Mom, please. This is a misunderstanding. I can't believe you'd do this to your own son. I was just trying to help you. This is how you repay me? I turned away. Couldn't read anymore. The next morning, Peter and his attorney went to the police station, filed a formal report for elder financial abuse, came back with papers for an emergency restraining order. He has to stay 500 feet away from you, Peter explained. If he tries to contact you, call the police immediately. He's going to hate me. He did this to himself. Over the following months, the legal process ground forward. Raymond hired an attorney, using money he still had hidden somewhere. His lawyer looked at the evidence and told him the truth. He couldn't win. Too much documentation. Too much proof. He had 3 choices. Fight it and go to prison. Settle civilly. Take a plea deal. Peter told me Raymond's girlfriend left him when she found out. That people at his work were talking. That he'd become someone nobody wanted to be around. I felt sorry for him. Hated myself for it. But I did. He's still my son, I said to Peter one night. I know. But you can't protect him from the consequences of his choices. I've lost him. My only child. Peter sat down beside me on the hotel bed. You lost him 12 years ago when he chose money over family. We're just acknowledging the truth now. The guilt sat heavy in my chest anyway. 6 months after the confrontation, Raymond's attorney negotiated a plea deal. He'd plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for full restitution, probation, $487,000 paid back through wage garnishment and seizure of his assets, 3 years of supervised probation, 500 hours of community service, a criminal record for elder abuse that would follow him forever. The life insurance money came back, $150,000 I'd never known existed. The house sale money, traced through Raymond's accounts, $320,000, the stolen Social Security payments, $17,000 still sitting in his account. The credit card debt disappeared, proven fraud, not my responsibility. My credit score, destroyed by cards I'd never opened, started to recover. Peter set up a new bank account in my name only, direct deposit from Social Security, $1,850 a month, going where it was supposed to go, to me. But the money didn't make me feel better. Just tired, exhausted from the betrayal of it all. The final court date came on a Tuesday morning in November. Peter drove me to the courthouse. I wore my green dress, still the nicest thing I owned. We walked through security, rode the elevator up to the 3rd floor, waited in the hallway outside the courtroom with Peter's attorney. Raymond appeared at the end of the hall with his lawyer, saw me standing there with Peter. He started walking toward us. Mom, please. Peter stepped between us immediately. You're violating the restraining order. Raymond stopped, looked at me over Peter's shoulder. His face was different, thinner, older, angry and desperate all at once. Mom, you can't do this. I'm your son. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. Back away, Peter said. Now. Raymond's attorney grabbed his arm and pulled him back, whispered something sharp. Raymond turned and walked into the courtroom ahead of us. We followed a few minutes later, sat on hard wooden benches while the judge reviewed the plea agreement. The courtroom smelled like old wood and floor polish, too quiet except for papers rustling and the court reporter's fingers on the keyboard. The judge was a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back tight. She read through the documents, looked up at Raymond standing with his attorney. Mr. Miller, you've agreed to plead guilty to multiple counts of financial elder abuse against your own mother. Do you understand the terms of this agreement? Yes, Your Honor. Full restitution of $487,000, 3 years supervised probation, 500 hours community service, permanent restraining order, criminal record. Yes, Your Honor. The judge looked at him for a long moment. I've been on this bench for 23 years. I've seen a lot of things, but stealing from your own mother, keeping her in poverty, while you gambled and lived well, that's among the worst. Raymond's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. You betrayed a trust that should be sacred. You exploited her grief and vulnerability. You isolated her from family to continue your theft. The judge's voice was cold. You're fortunate this is a plea deal and not a trial. I accept the agreement, but know that you'll carry this record for the rest of your life. She signed the papers. Bang of the gavel. Done. We left through a side door to avoid seeing Raymond again. Walked out into cold November air that felt clean after the stuffiness of the courtroom. Peter drove me back to the hotel. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? That evening I sat by the window watching the city lights come on one by one. Peter had gone home to get some sleep. Said he'd check on me in the morning. I thought about Raymond, my son, the baby I'd held, the boy who'd scraped his knees learning to ride a bike, the teenager who'd brought Sharon home to meet me, so proud and nervous. When had he changed? Or had he always been this way, and I'd been too blind to see it? I thought about the 12 years I'd lived in that apartment on Russell Street, stretching soup into 2 meals, cutting pills in half, writing letters to Peter I'd never send. All of it because I'd trusted my own son. The money was back now. The legal battle was over. Raymond couldn't hurt me anymore. But I felt hollow, empty in a way I didn't know how to fix. My phone buzzed. Text from Peter. "You okay?" I looked at the message for a long time before I answered. "I will be, eventually." And I hoped that was true. Nearly a year after that birthday I spent alone, I woke up in my own bedroom. Not the hotel. Not the apartment on Russell Street. My own house. Small, 2 bedrooms, 3 blocks from Peter's condo. Fenced backyard with a garden, updated kitchen with appliances that worked, comfortable furniture I'd picked out myself, heat that ran without me worrying about the bill. Not fancy, but mine, warm and safe, and mine. I got up and took my medication, full dose, taken on schedule, like the doctor ordered. Ate breakfast at my kitchen table. Real eggs, toast, orange juice, food in the fridge whenever I wanted it. After breakfast, I went out to the garden. Early summer morning, sun already warm on my shoulders. I'd planted tomatoes, herbs, flowers, spent spring mornings on my knees in the dirt, hands deep in soil, watching things grow. Hadn't been able to do that in 12 years. Hadn't had dirt under my fingernails, or the satisfaction of seeing something bloom because I'd tended it. Inside, photos covered the walls. Sharon smiling in her wedding dress. Young Peter with gap teeth holding a soccer ball. My late husband in his workshop, looking happy. Memories out in the open, instead of hidden in an album under the bed. The living room had a comfortable couch, a real television, a coffee table covered with photo albums. Peter and I looked through them during his visits. He'd ask questions about his mother, and I'd tell him stories. Like the time Sharon tried to cook Thanksgiving turkey and burned it so badly we ordered pizza instead. Peter had been 8 and thought it was the best Thanksgiving ever. Or when he won the science fair in 6th grade, and Sharon called everyone she knew to brag about it. Or the ordinary moments. Sharon reading bedtime stories with all the voices, singing off-key in the car, being a mother who loved her son more than anything. Peter was learning to remember her without the guilt Raymond had planted. Learning that his mother's death wasn't his fault, that she would want him happy. He was healing. We both were. Tuesday nights were sacred. Weekly dinner, just the 2 of us. Sometimes I cooked at my house. Sometimes Peter cooked at his place. Sometimes we cooked together, learning recipes Sharon used to make. He brought work problems to me sometimes, asked my advice on difficult decisions, treated me like I had wisdom worth hearing, like I mattered. Last month he'd invited me to an event for his company. I'd been nervous, but he'd introduced me to everyone. "This is my grandmother, Barbara," said it proud, like having me there meant something. I'd met his colleagues, his business partners, shook hands and made conversation and felt like part of his life. Finally, I'd started volunteering at the library twice a week, helped with community programs, organized book donations, had a book club on Thursday nights with women my own age, friends, real ones, not people I saw once a year. A normal life, the kind I'd been denied for 12 years. But the deepest healing happened in small moments. Tuesday evenings, quiet conversations, the comfort of knowing neither of us was alone anymore. This particular Tuesday, early June, Peter showed up at 5:30 like always, found me in the backyard staking tomato plants that had gotten tall enough to need support. He rolled up his sleeves without asking and knelt beside me, handed me stakes, held branches steady while I tied them. We worked in comfortable silence, birds singing in the trees, sun warm on our backs. "I never thought I'd have this again," I said, sitting back on my heels. "A garden, time with you, feeling safe in my own life." Peter looked at me. "I never thought I'd have this at all. Someone who knew my mom. Someone who loves me just because I exist. Someone who feels like home." I stopped working, turned to face him fully. "You were always a good boy, Peter. Even when your father tried to convince me otherwise. Somewhere inside I knew. I'm sorry you spent so many years alone. I'm sorry you did too." We looked at each other, understanding passing between us without more words needed. We'd saved each other. That was the truth of it. He'd given me safety, dignity, family, purpose. I'd given him the mother figure he'd been missing since he was 14. We'd both been broken by the same person, and somehow we'd helped each other heal. We finished with the garden and went inside to cook dinner together. Moved around the kitchen like we'd been doing this for years instead of months. He chopped vegetables while I seasoned chicken. We talked about his work, my book club, normal everyday things that felt precious because we'd almost never had them. After dinner we did dishes side by side. Him washing, me drying. Simple and ordinary and perfect. My 71st birthday came in August. Peter insisted on hosting a small party at my house. Nothing big, he'd promised. Just a few people who care about you. The guest list was short. 2 friends from book club, Patricia Rodriguez, my neighbor from Russell Street, who'd been kind when I had nothing, one of Peter's colleagues and his wife. Peter arrived early that morning with groceries and decorations. We spent the afternoon baking a cake together. My recipe, one I'd made for Sharon's birthdays years ago. Peter measured ingredients while I mixed, and we laughed when flour got everywhere. The party that evening was small and warm, candles on the cake, flowers on the table, people talking and laughing in my living room, in my house, with people who actually wanted to be there. Nothing like last year. Alone in that cold apartment with a dollar store cupcake, counting pills to make them last, believing nobody cared if I lived or died. Peter made a toast before we cut the cake, raised his glass and looked at me with eyes that reminded me so much of Sharon. To Grandma Barbara, who taught me what family really means, not blood, not obligation, but love, and actually showing up when it matters. I cried. Couldn't help it. Happy tears this time. Everyone sang happy birthday. I blew out the candles and made a wish even though it had already come true. After the guests left, Peter and I cleaned up together, washed dishes, put away leftovers, wiped down counters, comfortable silence between us. I thought about last year, the fear, the loneliness, accidentally texting him when I'd meant to reach my neighbor, the worst mistake that had turned into the best thing that ever happened. Peter dried the last dish and set it in the cabinet, looked completely at home in my kitchen, because he was home, we both were. You know, I don't keep those letters anymore, I said, the ones I wrote but never sent. He looked over. No? What did you do with them? Put them away in a box in the closet. Don't need them anymore. You're here now. Peter set down the dish towel and hugged me, held me tight. I'm not going anywhere, Grandma. I promise, never again. I held him back just as tight. Neither am I. He left around 10, hugged me goodbye at the door and drove home. I watched his taillights disappear down the street before I went back inside. Stood at the kitchen window looking out at the backyard, garden in full bloom, tomatoes ripening, flowers bright even in the fading light. The house was warm around me, real food in the fridge, medications lined up on the counter, full doses I could afford, bills paid, heat that worked, a life that felt solid. My phone buzzed on the counter. Text from Peter. Thanks for tonight. See you Tuesday. Love you. I picked it up and typed back. Love you too, sweetheart. Set the phone down. Looked around my kitchen. This small, ordinary space that meant everything. I thought about Raymond briefly. Felt sadness but not guilt anymore. He'd made his choices. I couldn't change that. Couldn't fix him or save him. Could only save myself. He'd lost everything. His mother, his son, his reputation, his freedom, in a way, with that criminal record following him forever. I'd grieved that loss, still grieved it sometimes, but I'd made peace with it too. I thought about my late husband, hoped he'd be proud of me for standing up for myself, for not letting our son destroy what was left of my life. I thought about Sharon, knew she'd be grateful that Peter was cared for, that he had someone who loved him and kept her memory alive. Thank you, I whispered to the empty kitchen. To Sharon for being the kind of mother Peter needed to remember. To fate, or luck, or whatever force had made my fingers slip that night. To the accidental text that had brought us back together. To my own courage for trusting Peter when he said he'd help. I was 71 years old. For 12 years I'd believed I was alone. Believed I deserved to be alone because my grandson didn't want me. All of it lies. The truth was, I'd never stopped being loved. Peter had never stopped being the good boy I'd raised. We'd just been kept apart by someone who'd twisted our grief into a weapon. But we'd found each other again, and we'd built something new. Not the family we'd lost, that was gone. But something different, something chosen. Peter had chosen to stay. I'd chosen to trust. Together we'd chosen family. And that made all the difference. I turned off the kitchen light and headed to my bedroom, climbed into my own bed in my own house. No water stains on the ceiling, no cold air seeping through broken windows, no fear about where next month's rent would come from. Safe, warm, loved. I closed my eyes and slept peacefully. No more unsent letters waiting to be written. No more wondering if I mattered to anyone. No more waiting for calls that would never come. I knew now. Knew I was loved. Knew I had family. Knew I'd survived something that should have broken me. And that knowledge changed everything. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you believe Raymond deserved a second chance? Or did he get what he deserved? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.